Next we have Erin Rainwater. Oh, really? Okay. Just got a comment told me Oliver North will be in Branson this year for Veterans Week.
Yeah, speaker of the Marine Corps Ball.
Yep.
Marine, you had to get Marine Corps in there, didn't you?
Yes, I
I tell you, I don't care where you go, you can't get rid of a jarhead.
Thanks. I just wanted to give somewhat of an anecdotal story about the fiction that I write, which no one who writes fiction is ever really, it's never entirely fictional. There's always a little bit of yourself or someone else that you know in your stories, whether you plan it that way or not. But from the time I was very young, I was always fascinated, excuse me, by American history, and especially the era of the Civil War. It's such an enigmatic time in our history, and the questions will go on and on about why how we could get to the point where we would fight each other that way and consider each other enemies because of your thoughts on slavery or union or things like that. But so I always wrote theme papers and things like that on the Civil War whenever given the opportunity. And so that when I grew up and got big, my first novel is about the Civil War. It's called True Colors, and it's about a nurse, and they say write what you know, and I'm a nurse. And the hero is an intelligence officer. And my father was an intelligence officer. He was in the Army Air Corps, and he served in North Africa during World War II. And I had finished the novel for quite some time and was pushing it to publishers when, back in 2003, I was visiting back home in Pittsburgh, where my mom still lived in the house she had lived in since she and my dad got married in 1939. And every time I would go back and visit, I would always go down in her basement and root around and find little treasures. And I just about tapped the place dry after many years. But there was this one very dark and very dusty corner back there. It had no light in it, and I had always avoided it. Even as a kid, we never went back in there. But I got brave, and I got a flashlight, and I went back into this corner under a workbench, and I found 3 shoe boxes. And the dust was like this. I mean, it was literally 50 years of dust on it. And so, with fear and trembling, I kind of reached out because I didn't know what was going to crawl out when I lifted the lid, but I did, and there were envelopes in there. So I pulled the boxes out and found out that there were 3 shoe boxes full of letters that my parents had written to each other during World War II. And mostly from my dad, who I found out was a prolific writer. He never attempted to publish anything, but he had this natural ability. And letters that he wrote that meant the most to me were, he talked to my mom about how much he appreciated how easy she made it for him to make the hardest decision of his life, which was to go away to war. He was a successful attorney in Pittsburgh, and he wasn't drafted. He didn't have to go, but he felt that he was called, he called it a tick inside, that he was the one that was meant to go and do this job. She was pregnant with their first child, and so this was an extremely difficult decision. And I meant to copy some of the letters and read directly, but I failed to do that. So I'm kind of going from memory. But he said, he told my mom that in those days preceding the acceptance of his commission, he appreciated how easy she made it for him to decide in those times when he was harassed choosing between home and country, that she allowed him to do what she knew that he needed to do. He told her in other letters that he would always be grateful to the Almighty for having given her to him. And he was always grateful until the day he died, which was only in 1953, and I was 2 years old at the time. he spoke of this tick, and he said that he said he could let the other man do his job, but that he would never have been easy with it. He would have always have been distressed knowing that someone else was doing the job that he was meant to do. Well, after reading these letters, even though I had finished my novel, I went back and I had to rewrite a scene, because there's a scene where Cassie and Michael are he's having to decide whether to go away or stay with her. He had a choice between home and country himself. And so I took some of my father's handwritten words and made them dialogue in my novel True Colors, and it's become my legacy to my parents and their love.